Recording is in progress. Okay, this is class number 2 for a Tartini M350 music, marketing, and promotion. And there is something I want to share. So let's see if I can make this work. And everybody stay tuned for a second. Okay, so I'm going to stop the share for a second. Anybody recognize that piece?
Of course.
Is that Gustav Mahler?
It was. So, Cyrus, you didn't get a chance to talk much yesterday. Tell us a little bit, if you can, about that. Is now a good time for you to talk?
Yeah, it's a opening to the Fifth Symphony. It's a Trower march, so funeral march. Um, just kind of this solemn uh, solo opening to the massive symphony. Yeah, kind of sets the tone for the rest of the first movement there.
Massive indeed. Did you notice how I let it play all out a little bit further than like the last note the trumpet player plays? Because the little bit of what are those, Andrew? String braces and lower instruments that are taking over, and then it goes forward. And I really like, Cyrus, that you mentioned it's a Trower march, which leads to a little bit of interesting anecdote from San Francisco. The San Francisco Symphony, where so what you Glenn Fishthal, a friend of mine, and also a fellow Clueless to Music graduate, played principal trumpet there for 25 or so years in San Francisco. And what'd you call it, Cyrus? Solemn. In rehearsal, actually, there's 2 Glenn stories. I'll tell the rehearsal one second. Davies Hall, is that where they play San Francisco Symphony? After the whole massive, as you called it, Mahler Symphony Number 5 was over, finally, somebody named Sheila from the balcony seats came down around to backstage to try to find Glenn, principal trumpet, who played what you just heard, and went to him and told him, and this is sort of hard to believe and maybe a little bit frightening, that from up there in the balcony, she could see an aura around Glenn playing as he played that opening. And so, and I think somehow, without scaring him off completely, she also told him that this led her to believe that he is the man that she should marry. I'm not making this up. And I guess he listened patiently, and they've now been married at least 20 years. So somehow that worked out. But what he did tell her in the moment was, well, Sheila, thank you, but it's a funeral march. You do know that. So I guess that didn't dissuade her. the one that we just listened to is my teacher, Bernie Edelstein, also Glenn's teacher, on the road in Miami, live, recorded live with the Cleveland Orchestra. And I recorded this. You guys will get it in the mail, as they say, and you can re-listen to it again. And Andrew, I'd be hard pressed to come up. And of course, I'm biased completely that Bernie is the best of all time. But I'd be hard pressed to come up with a version of this opening that's better than what we just heard. It's not a contest, but that sure was good. What do you think, Andrew?
Yeah, I mean, I think Stefan and Keith maybe aren't as in deep to this kind of stuff as us, but
Yeah,
yeah, it's wickedly difficult. Completely solo trumpet, no unaccompanied at the beginning. Doesn't happen too much in the repertoire, so
no,
it's definitely a a nerve-wracking moment. It can be.
nerve-wracking. I think that's the
Mm.
key. And Cyrus, you called it solemn, right? So how do you? Yeah, we'll talk more about. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. So let's go to the slide deck, and I've got some cool stuff prepared, I think, for you guys today. So let's launch right in, okay? Any questions, comments, anything from yesterday? You guys all good? Cyrus, you have to drive anywhere today, or are you online most, or yet to be
No,
determined?
I'm locked in place today.
Okay.
One geographical location.
Michael, can you post a link to that video in the chat?
Uh, yes, if you don't mind, I'll do that in a couple minutes because it's hard for me to
Sure,
do
yeah.
two things at the same
Not a,
time.
not a problem at all.
And also it'll be in what you get by email. The link to it will be in there.
That's
too, so
perfect.
you can lift to the whole thing. So here's like where's today's slides? Let's see what we got here. Uh, and then let's see if we can get this. Oh, I got to put sharing back on now that I found the right thing. We'll kind of do the same schedule today as yesterday. We will take a break after, when we get close to an hour and probably be able to stick to kind of the same time frame. There's a little less content in terms of, well, let me put it this way. There's a little less review, point by point from the textbook today. I think I was describing yesterday as marketing and today as music. They're actually kind of the same thing. That's kind of the main point of this class. But today, talking about music production and promotion from an overview perspective and customer/audience behavior. And what does that mean? So rolling forward, that's a little more detail about today's topics. And participation and engagement is encouraged. Please, please, please ask a lot of questions and interrupt when you got something that's either confusing or you want to add. All good. And the first thing I thought, just launching right in, and oddly enough, this really connects music and business marketing. Don Valentine, who was also one of my mentors, like Bernie, only from a different branch of the church, let's call it. Don was the founder of Sequoia Capital, and he was older than dirt when I worked with him. He's passed away about 3 or 4 years ago. But I was very lucky that my first startup software company I worked for, which is on here in logo, Decarta. Sounds kind of Italian, doesn't it? Almost like music and some of that music notation. Don was, we had funding from Sequoia and Menlo Ventures, a couple other VCs. And Don, for some reason, the biggest, baddest dog on Sand Hill Road, which is where all these firms are, was chairman of the board of our BOD board of directors, was Don Valentine. So I got to get schooled by Don once a month. And Andrew and Cyrus, you guys might get this more so than other listeners, but since I'm a trumpet player and a former Tom Stevens trumpet student, I'm good with getting schooled or getting, my helmet dinged. Uh, Don didn't rattle me like he seemed to rattle everybody else there, but I'm used to this kind of stuff. Andrew, I see you nodding, right? That makes sense.
There's a lot of stories about Tom Stevens out there.
So, and what Don said about market and marketing is the way they decide what to invest in is there a potential for a big market? And there's a couple key words there. Market's one of the key words, but potential is another really key word. And what they don't really, as he mentioned, he said technology, product, people, none of those really are important in how we invest in things. And one reason those are less important is that Don knew that those are all things that can be fixed, replaced, or changed. If you've got something that there's a big market for the solution itself, the two original founders of Cisco, for example, everybody's heard of Cisco. How about Google? The two original founders of Google, they are nowhere to be found, these founders, in the current day world domination that's occurring from Google. They made their money. They probably are still making money. They're still giant shareholders, but they're not involved in the company. And usually the founders can't quite make it to the finish line not always. There are some. Jensen Huang is one who is a founder and current CEO of NVIDIA. Very, very strong story there. There's plenty of other ones, not plenty, but there's a handful of other ones. And then Don, I found out after he passed away that he was a board member at the San Francisco Symphony and the opera. And that's what made me think, oh, no wonder this guy made sense to me when I listened to what he had to say. So marketing and markets, super important. Any questions on that page or comments? I'll keep going. Oh, it's about the market again. Remember this? I'll probably show this every class. Inside of the Walt Disney Hall, downtown Los Angeles. Marketing is all about filling these seats and then being able to reach a market with what we have to offer. Because, if you're doing it and nobody hears it, it's not really a market. So then I thought about, all right, well, where do we start? It says at the top of this slide. Well, where did I start? So I've got a couple of stories about this. My first real job was working for the Ringling Brothers Circus, third trumpet, right out of college. I was like 23 years old or something. And I'll keep this short and also make it humorous because it was humorous. So here's how this works. The circus literally rolls into town on a train and they unload all the animals and the tigers, they don't let them march down the street. They have each one an individual tiger pen with wheels on it. They roll down the street. Elephants walk down the street and horses and whatnot. And then they set up shop and they bring a 2 or 3 musicians with them, a couple of trumpet players, a drummer, and an organist. And then they hire the rest of the band. This doesn't happen anymore. And by the way, they don't have elephants anymore. Those are 2 different parts of the story. But back then, and you have one rehearsal at 2 p.m. on Tuesday. And then for the rest of 2 or 3 weeks while the circus is there, you do 2 shows a day, 3 on Saturday. And you get Mondays off. I can tell you, when you get halfway through, Andrew, that second show on Saturday, when there's a third one coming up, and you're thinking to yourself, and of course it's physically taxing and it's a chop buster for sure, but it's more of a brain buster. Like you get halfway through the second show and you start to wonder, okay, is this the second half of the second show or am I in the first half of the third show? How did I even get here today? What's my name? It's really a tough but wonderful job. But after that first rehearsal, and in rehearsal already, I'm like sort of out of my element, totally out of it. Never been in the circus before. I might have been to the one. And they didn't teach this at college, by the way, guys. Nobody teaches you this. And rehearsal's going by. The book is this thick, 3 inches thick. You're turning pages as fast as you can. And all these old guys, the 45-year-olds, are playing this as if, like, with all kinds of bravado and confidence, as if they've been doing it for years. And this is my first real job. And I thought, well, I can pretend to know what I'm doing. It looks like kind of what they're doing. They're not on this show. So as I did that, it goes better. You know, you have confidence and off you go. All right, rehearsal's over. Grab a quick hamburger and a Coke from the circus cart backstage. And you're in the arena, right? It's a big arena. Here it was at the Fabulous Forum. Now, boom. First show is starting. Lights go down. Spotlights are over the place. And you just start playing. And everything is really fast. You got to watch a conductor. You stop. For you musicians in the crowd, every time you stop and play it, because you don't play to the end of the song, you play to the end of the act. So when the act is done, the conductor stops you and then you play a B flat chord, regardless of whether the song was in D, E flat, C, minor, whatever. You play a B flat chord. Okay, that's the end of that song, and then you go to the next one. So it's you got to really pay attention. Now we're almost done with the first half. And overhead is a thing called the Wheel of Death. And it's the Wheel of Death, Cyrus, the Wheel of Death. Check this out. By the way, in today's world, they still have these things, but it's now in the 21st century, it's called the Wheel of Destiny. Okay. And it's a big metal thing with a rotating axle right here. And on one end is a kind of a hamster wheel, big enough for a person to run around inside of, and the other end has a counterweight, and the whole thing rotates like this. And it's all overhead, right over the trumpet section. And so we're playing, and I'm looking up and thinking, wow, I hope now the guy's running on the outside of the hamster wheel. And I'm just watching and playing and watching. And suddenly, when the thing gets to the top again, he slips off the side and falls completely off of this thing. And the whole arena gasps when they see this, right? And then he, at the last second, he grabs, and I'm standing up because he's right over I'm getting out of the way. At the last second, he grabs onto the wheel, and then the whole arena sighs a sigh of relief, right? And then, okay, now first half is over. Oh man, I went back to the little circus cart again for a Coke to try to rattle my nerves. I mean, the ice cubes are rattling in this thing. And I have a whole nother story about elephants in the start of the second show, which I will shorten to say that, but the second half of the first show. See, I'm already confused. The second half of the first show, they line up all the elephants. There's like 12 or 15 of them lined up with the business end facing the band. I have a little protective 2.5-foot velvet curtain between me and the elephants. And by business end, I don't mean the end with a trunk on it. It's the other end of the elephant. Now this element right next to me starts to do his business. And this giant elephant turd like falls down, hits the aluminum rail on the top of my curtain, teeters for a moment, and then thankfully falls on the outside of the, now I'm protected by the protective velvet curtain from the giant elephant turd. And somehow the guy with the, Cyrus, you're back, thanks. Somehow the guy with the golden shovel missed this thing. And then the clowns, these 4 clowns, and one of them seems to be the head clown, and he's wearing a really ill-fitting giant blue suit and a red tie that's way too long, orange hair and orange face. And I know what you might be thinking, but it wasn't him. This is 1977. And the clown looks down and he looks at me and he says, are you saving this? And by now, so I'm not really sure what the moral of this story is, but it might be shit happens. And you got to be ready when things are happening, even though you're not ready. And this is all a part of marketing. It's all a part of business. You know, stuff happens. You're putting it out there. You're performing, and there's a continuum, I think, between marketing and sales and delivery and collection of fees. And Keith runs a business, so he's seen this whole kind of spectrum, left to right business process, right? That's how they say it here at SAP in Germany. Process. Somewhere in the process between learning and practicing and execution and delivery and then getting paid. There was a marketing part of this thing and branding, so that Ringling brand is huge. There's a great marketing book, by the way, that is on my list. I'm going to show you and deliver to you the reading list, Blue Ocean Strategy, really great marketing book. And it talks about the rise of Cirque du Soleil as an example of the right way to build a new business, Blue Ocean Strategy. Their thing is, it's a fishing metaphor. Go fish in the blue ocean. Don't fish over here in the red with fish guts and blood ocean where there's all kinds of activity. Also, I would say don't fish in the Dead Sea where there are no fish, but go in an adjacent ocean where there are fish, and so what most people is a marketing tip. Human nature is the thing. I know what we'll do. We're going to have our own circus, and we'll put Ringling Brothers out of business. And the way we'll do it is by having bigger elephants. Okay, that's not going to work, guys. Here's why. Elephants are all the same size. And it's not really, and Ringling is already in existence. How are you going to go up against them with no differentiation against a formidable? It's not like David versus Goliath. It's like slingshot versus Goliath. Somebody has to be doing something, and that won't work. So that's the story of Blue Ocean Strategy. I'll keep rolling. Any questions? Cyrus, I think you got most of this. Thanks for clicking back in. Anybody? Bueller? So let's launch into Tom Morris, Music Marketing, one of the two books that I'm suggesting. And actually, I have a third book to suggest today. The other book is a classic marketing textbook, very heavy. So I picked a couple of chapters from Tom Morris's book. And the first one is, but before I do, I want to make sure, any questions about the circus? Does that kind of resonate, you guys? Okay. So Tom I mentioned yesterday, he wrote this book after being CEO of the Boston Symphony. He was there 17 years, CEO of the Cleveland Orchestra, he was there 17 years, and then artistic director of Ojai Music Festival, where he was our artistic director. He was CEO of those first two. And what we learned by reading his book, each chapter has kind of some lessons learned and people that he learned from and got involved with to make things fly. And what I thought was really interesting is the Ojai Music Festival experience. And what they did, Ojai was, I would call, kind of a sleepy music festival in even sleepier Ojai. I've been there a number of times, and I was lucky enough to work at the Ojai Music Festival in the trumpet section at least once. Has anybody been to Ojai or to the music festival? And okay, Keith, what are your observations just about Ojai or the music festival or anything?
Yeah, Ojai, it was interesting because I moved to California about 10 years ago, and Ojai, I almost thought of it as this like undiscovered gem. I'm like,
Yeah,
wow, I wonder if someone knows about this place. And it's obviously this just amazing, you know, uh, uh, urban kind of urban, not agrarian kind of
Yeah,
beautiful, just really really beautiful outside of north of Los Angeles, and it's an amazing farming community. There's really great food scene. There's good wine, great camping north of there, Los Padres National Forest, too. So yeah, it just felt like this, like it feels undiscovered,
yeah,
to a certain component, to a certain degree, and you wouldn't know that it is, maybe an hour outside of Los Angeles. That's
yeah.
kind of was my initial take.
I think that's right. It's not on the way to anywhere, I think is part of
No.
why that's true. Other
Hmm.
places like, I don't know, Santa Barbara and San Luis Obispo, if you're driving to San Francisco, you might stop in those places on your way. You're on your way to San Francisco. But nobody goes through Ojai to get to some other destination. That would be crazy because there's a faster way to get there by avoiding
Right.
Ojai. It's just not on the way. And I think that's why. And Andrew, have you been to Ojai or any exposure to the music festival there?
No, not yet.
Okay, well, that's an assignment. Go get on the list using marketing techniques so that they start calling you to work at Ojai. Boyd Hood is the one that called me to work there. So call Boyd and ask him how that for advice on that. Cyrus, you're earlier in the cycle of career, I think, just by how long you've been at this. But I would put this on your list to look into also. Sound good?
Yeah, Ojai's beautiful. I've been there once or twice. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so here's how they turned it from kind of a sleepy once a year, like Memorial Day is generally when I think the Memorial Day weekend, when the music festival happens. And the overarching strategy that they used while Tom was there to really transform this thing was a series of annual creative partnerships with extraordinary and varied artists serving successfully as music directors. That's sort of the overarching strategy that was in place. And what he started doing is every year featuring a different music director, but also artistic experimentation. So they would you start pushing the boundaries instead of just playing the same Mozart and other stuff that's easily socially acceptable to the audience. It's a balancing act, right? If your audience is used to Beethoven, Mozart, and maybe an occasional Tchaikovsky, and even, wow, Mahler or Shostakovich. Uh, if you do something that's like written for 7 typewriters, or I think John Cage has a piece which is basically silence on stage. People come on stage and they just sit there and then they all leave. Uh, you can't really just yank someone out of a Mozart experience and plunk them into that. There has to be some sort of a transformation going. That's why we're talking about genre breaking programming. So moving beyond traditional classical stuff. This is the key to really making this thing succeed. And yeah, like you called it, Keith, kind of, I forget your exact wording, but it was like, it seems undiscovered. I think you used that word, but it's really, and it's not that far away. It's not like it's far. If you were going to Santa Barbara, as I mentioned, if you decided at the spur of the moment at the 33, I think is the route that goes over there. Hey, let's have lunch in Ojai. You could do that. It'd take about 40 minutes to get there and then get back on the road and off you go. But it is intimate because of the, kind of manufacturer remoteness. Let's call it that. And a unique setting. I do think it's kind of unique. And an already engaged audience. There's not a lot of words on this slide, but man, each word carries a lot of meaning, I think. and an engaged audience. And we've all seen, like with COVID, even the LA Chamber Orchestra, or especially the LA Chamber Orchestra, is really struggling to fill the halls. And they come out and they play this fantastic music with the best musicians around. And the hall is like, I think it's a little better now, but for the whole year after the pandemic was over, whatever that means, they were like a half to a third empty to maybe close it to a half. That's not an engaged audience. That's a disengaged audience, right? So these guys, they had some real keys to success to make this thing fun. Any questions on that, or I've got more on Ojai on the next page. So how did it turn out? Well, the kind of the metrics of where this all landed in transformation is from a single long weekend to stretching the definition of the word weekend. Like now they have stuff on Thursday instead of just Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or maybe it was Saturday, Sunday, and half a day Monday because it was a holiday week. Now there's actually stuff happening on Thursday and all day Monday and Monday night. You know, so they didn't make it a month-long thing from a weekend, but they stretched the meaning of weekend to add some extra things. And they also have satellite venues. They were expanding beyond the Ojai Libby Bowl, which is where the most of the stuff happens, and making that instead of the only venue, making it the hub, I would call it, for these other satellites. They'd send small chamber groups around into town. They'd send them over to Ventura and other nearby locales. And in doing that, you're kind of doing two things at the same time. And you're going to hear, this is the power of twos. One of the powers of the twos is not only are you delivering services and product, to use some business to another venue, but you're also marketing to a broader market by doing something. And, you know, far away Ventura, like I said, it's about 40 minutes, but it may as well be Jupiter for if you're in Ojai, you're not really stimulated to go anywhere from there because it's beautiful. So these satellite venues, and then just the genre expansion, getting beyond the traditional fare, but being grounded in tradition. So we're not discarding Mozart and Beethoven and these others I was mentioning, but we're grounded in that stuff. And so we can see the connectivity and the through line from all that. So that's how, or maybe that's a better way to say is this is what ended up defining the expansion. So how did we do this? Any questions on this page? I got more in Ojai on the next page.
Yeah, I have a little question,
Yeah.
Mike.
Yeah.
Could you maybe expand a little on that last bold genre expansion? So what did that look like? Did they always have like a, meat and potatoes like a Mozart or Beethoven on each show, or?
Great question. I think my observation, and this is sort of my observation, not really a historical fact exactly, but where, like you said, kind of meat and potatoes. I'll use the last concert I played in, which had a Schubert Rosamond overture. So that's a cool thing because it's standard fare and it's an overture. So it comes at the beginning of the program. Then the second thing was a Mozart oboe concerto. So it's really good oboe soloist from Claire is the principal oboist. Shout out to Claire from the LA Chamber Orchestra. And the rest of the orchestra playing back up to the oboe soloist. Intermission, and then the back half of the concert was Brahms' First Symphony. So really standard stuff. What my observation of what they would start doing here is maybe instead of that, a program like that, that was very typical. That was the kind of program that I played in when I was at Ojai. So maybe what they would do instead of that, they would say, do the back half of the concert. I'll just pick one of my favorites, John Adams' Dr. Atomic, which is a story of Robert Oppenheimer. And John Adams wrote this as an opera, but then he turned it into a symphony. So you could do that on the back end. There's a lot of stuff in there that would be like shocking to the 1960 listener, but not so much in the 21st century listener. That's sort of what I mean about expanding beyond traditional fare. And they would also go way beyond John Adams stuff as well, and things that even those of us who are in the business and might sit and think, wow, I can't really tell if I like this or if it's being played well or anything else.
Yeah.
I guess I'm just going to have to chalk it up to mind expansion and keep listening multiple times. Andrew, isn't that kind of what we think sometimes when we hear this stuff?
Yeah, and it kind of reminds me of a story from Cyrus and I's teacher, Jens
Oh, let's hear it.
Lindemann.
Let's hear it.
And this comes, he says, from Doc Severinsen. And he said, so you have like an hour-long show, you're maybe playing 6 to 8 or 9 tunes. He's like, you get one for you, the rest are for the audience.
Right.
You get one, if you want to play some super out there piece, and then the rest you got to play to the people who came, who paid.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so continuing on, and then I just saw your note, Cyrus. Thanks. So this I find really interesting, and I copied this from Tom's book, Tom Morris's book, and with accreditation from Always the Music by Tom Morris. He calls it the Ojai Music Festival flywheel. And it's really interesting because if you look at, it's sort of, I would call this framework, in addition to being a flywheel, a life cycle, where you sort of start at the top with your organization. And you start attracting unconventional talent, unleash some transcendent creativity, forge into an immersive 4-day experience as opposed to fragmented 3 days, ignite passion reactions. That's where marketing starts to happen, right? The market responds positively, and then amplify the community support of these positive reactions, and then enhances your global reputation. This, once you get a more enhanced global reputation, you can attract unconventional and bigger talent and stuff. Maybe even Doc Severinsen or Jens. And it's, I think if you think of it as a flywheel and or a life cycle, you don't have to be running the Ojai Music Festival to adapt this kind of principle to whatever it is you do. If you're a small business or a big business and you're trying to make the whole thing grow, you keep going around this cycle and it'll work. If you're an individual contributor, some people we know are individual freelance musicians. Other people we know are individual contract programmers, coders, and advisors in technology, AI stuff. This approach really can be used. And so I thought, and as we go through these other chapters in Tom Morris's book, he refers to a book that others might know. Stefan, you might know, Good to Great by Jim Collins, really great business book. If not, it's on the new reading assignments. So I have recommended this to a lot of people. Keith might know that book. Really powerful stuff. So as I was reading Tom Morris's book, I was reminded of a slide that we've been using at my little company, Tartini, for the last 5 years, which looks like this. Boy, doesn't this look similar? It's definitely not co-opted from Tom Morris's book, because that book just came out in the last 6 months. I've had this going since 2018, and the way I structured it was with the flywheel and life cycle concept. and with the idea of accelerating. And I picked the America's Cup race winner from that previous year. And I picked this boat because it's the one that crushed Larry Ellison and his boat. And so I got a big kick out of that. He's the current CEO and founder of Oracle. I'm an SAP guy. We compete directly with Oracle. I can't shake that out of my system, even though I worked for Oracle for 5 years. It was an undercover assignment. And what I tell people is, look, I come in at the top of the cycle and I try to participate with what you're doing now, kind of diagnose how it's working, and then make some prescriptions, recommendations of how you might improve your own results. And that leads to some transformation. And here's where the heavy lifting comes, I tell them, when you are scaling this thing upwards and really taking this to scale. And then let's assess how it worked. And we keep going on the whole cycle. So I wanted to share this point of reference from the Tartini usage of the concept from Jim Collins' book. Any comments, questions on anything with this? Good. And let's see, how are we doing on time? Yeah, maybe 10 minutes. We'll take a 5-minute break. So again, from Tom Morris's book is chapter 5, Being Fearless, Pierre Boulez. Oh, by the way, that opening Mahler 5, that was played by my teacher, Bernie Edelstein. The conductor was Pierre Boulez. How cool is that? Pierre Boulez, it's really one of the leaders of 20th century music from the conducting podium. And what he and Morris did was this quote that came from the book: collaborating on a project served as a powerful wake-up call on the significance of unambiguous artistic principles. Love that. And showed what working with a great artist with an idealist fervor could be like. And you might think, wow, okay, isn't this a marketing class? Mike, what are we talking about? And I would just say, yeah, it's a marketing class. But Pierre Boulez, I don't know if he knew that he was a marketing expert, but he and Tom sure had a marketing expertise in the way they grew this business and initiative and music festival. And the keys to success were 35 years of working together, because Tom not only worked with Boulez there, but he also worked with him in Cleveland, like that recording I showed you, in Boston. And the uncompromising approach that Boulez was known for. I love this comment about searing criticism of others. Okay, impatience derived from what he was regarded as the historical inevitability of the serial technique, whatever that means. But it's so great to have conviction in what you're doing and be confident of it. And what I started to write this last bullet as the result was they had Boulez there as a 7-time music director over like a 17-year arc that Tom Morris was at Ojai. You know, in the olden days, I think they pretty much had a different conductor every year. And if you had been there last year or the year before, you probably weren't somebody they thought they wanted back. They just kept changing it out. By having him there sort of every other year, it seems to me this is not only an effect, but also the cause of the life cycle of success. So pretty interesting stuff. And if you look up LA Times articles about Tom Morris when he retired from Ojai, they called him the man who brought Boulez to Ojai. And it's pretty interesting. Any comments, questions about this? Okay, here's the connection, chapter 8. which is called A Wider Perspective, connection to Jim Collins. So the business components applied to music uh, that Tom borrowed and used from Jim Collins. What I'd like to do, if you guys are okay with taking like a 5-minute break now and then come back, can everybody come back okay in 5 minutes? Does that work? Eat good?
Yeah,
Okay.
I've got a few. I'm gonna have to hop off probably after the break a little bit. But looking
Yeah.
forward to the transcript.
Okay, sounds good. Let's dive into this page when we get back. Right now, my clock says
Sure.
12:21. Let's come back at 12:25 and we'll keep rolling. Okay, sounds good. Okay, team, we're back. So we're going to test my ability to do more than one thing at a time. Uh, but I think we can. And the way we're going to do that is either, so Stefan, I'm going to put you on the spot for a second because you're uh, one of my colleagues from the AI business world and not so much music. And so what sort of, I bet this is stimulating some new ideas and stuff as you think about what we're learning from Tom Morris and Jim Collins, and some of these other folks. Do you have any thoughts, key comments, questions, anything comes to mind?
It's funny, not specifically around AI, but as you know, I run Orange County AI, which is my community group. Um, and I did like that flywheel that was it Jim Morris or Tom Morris? Jim Collins. Sorry about that. Yeah, Jim Collins had kind of created where I was also looking at the specific words that he was using in that wheel, and they were all very vivid words. So it was, ignite, unconventional talent, just like very. It, I know we've mentioned him a couple times, but like Scott Galloway does similar things where he uses very visceral language, so language that refers to things like natural disasters or war or things that invoke a lot of like physical senses. So, heat, bright lights, things of that nature. And I I have to think that maybe the same person who would both be in music and write a business book and has that kind of creative sense and that sensory sort of uh thinking, I guess, would all of the words that he used to describe that flywheel weren't ones that I would normally pull from first because I'm thinking in a different way, right? Like I'm just thinking like, oh, descriptive, but I'm not thinking like, how do I evoke like emotion and trigger people's fight or flight or I don't know if I'm thinking about it the right way, but that's just what I noticed was like the all 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 the things that he mentioned because that's also what I'm trying to do with my group as well, right? Like I'm trying to create experiences that build credibility and get people to want to come back and get people to want to engage on the leadership and contribute to the group. But I just really like both the model that he created, as well as the very specific language that made it more vivid in my mind.
So I think that's a really good observation about like the power. I would call that the power of specific language and especially verbs, you know. And Andrew, I'll put you on the spot for a second. It's a little bit like, the connectivity between the two left and right brain stuff, right? Logical brain and right emotional brain. And if you can get words that have meaning, that's kind of a logical meaning, but they also have this emotional component to them, which is a lot of what we talk about and actually do in performing arts. Does that question make sense to you, Andrew? Can you add a few key components to that?
Yeah, I really like I agree with what Stefan was saying. I remember another word that came up was a transcendent experience.
Ah,
And I think the good thing about using language like that is that it's also open-ended. What's transcendent for one person is not the same for everybody. So I think, yeah, it's kind of we're trying to get to the middle of like this artistic, emotion driven, and then you guys more on the software AI side, real logical, and trying to find that balance of where we can meet everyone where they are.
that's well said. And then Keith, you're kind of on that cusp, aren't you, with your business in using scientific principles to touch acoustical sometimes musical and sometimes just environmental, not just environmental, but environmental stuff, and kind of that you're sort of on that intersection yourself in your business, I think, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's always this interface between, um, you know, the commerce component of the materials, right? The understanding client needs and objectives, the physics and the performance of the materials, understanding where the space is at and where we need to get the environment to in a perfect world, and then balancing hopefully that solution that we're implementing is an aesthetic support or architecturally doesn't look like an afterthought.
Right.
And so that's always been an interesting interface where I kind of say, being being an acoustics guy or whatever you want to call it, a sound guy, you know, we also kind of have to become this de facto interior design firm
Right.
because hopefully what we're doing at the end of it, just like those wedge panels that are immediately to the wall of that you and Stephen are sitting next to,
Right.
there
Right.
was intentionality between the design as just as there were with the cloud panels that are above you to your right and left. All of that is just, you want to make sure that the end product fulfills both of those needs, right? That visual and also the sound, the acoustic and auditory need there. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said. Thanks. That really adds a lot. Cyrus, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but you might have a couple of thoughts to add for just what Andrew and Stefan and Keith. Does that kind of make sense to you? Can you add a couple of components to that?
Yeah, I mean, sort of, I'm still at the very sort of beginning of my career. I'm still learning how to market myself, like how I want to market that. So, just I like the idea of creating, these sort of words that are sort of ambiguous enough for whoever's reading them to sort of fill in the blank in their own specific way, but also
Mm-hmm.
to sort of maybe guide them into a perception of you, of who you are, what your organization is. If that makes sense.
That totally makes sense. I think what you just described, in fact, is uh, exactly on in alignment or a close cousin with something that's called cognitive dissonance, and it's a way to generate uh, a positive reaction in the listener by saying something that's like the most traditional way to generate cognitive dissonance is to say something that's uh, self you're describing a paradox, right? So you're describing something that's sort of self-contradictory as you say it. And what people will do is they'll look at you just the way Stefan did when I said self-contradictory, like, huh? What does that mean? And Cyrus, I think that's what you were talking about. Like, how do you make this connection? Right? How do you get people's attention? How do you get your messaging and what you're getting across? Another book recommendation, which is on the list you'll get, is by Steve Martin. Not that Steve Martin, but a friend of mine who's a software sales executive. And he uses, oddly enough, Ronald Reagan, who was called the great communicator when he was president. Not everyone is a fan of Reagan on all fronts, but he was a great communicator. And one of the things that he did well is that he got people to listen. And one of my favorite examples is someone asked him, so what's your strategy on winning the Cold War? And he said, well, it's easy. Our strategy is we win and they lose. And that causes people to go, what? That's not a strategy. What are you talking about? But now he's got your attention. And now you're actually listening. You might even be arguing. That's like one of the uh, most active forms of listening is to argue with someone. So there's that. But yeah, thank you guys for adding those things. So let's talk a little bit about these business concepts from Jim Collins' book, and as he applied them, as Tom Morris did. BHAG. What Jim says in the book is a big, hairy, audacious goal is what you want your company or organization or person to be shooting for. And in my time with advising small companies, I'm taking a page out of Pierre Boulez's book, actually, or maybe Tom Stevens, Andrew, is when I say, hey, look, what's your BHAG? I will ask them. And they'll tell me. I said, I hate to tell you guys this, but and I'm channeling Tom Stevens. If I told them that, they wouldn't know what that meant. But that's not a BHAG. That's an SHAG. Your BHAG is way too small. You need to be shooting for something big. Not Tom famously told one of his trumpet students who had this genius plan figured out where he really wanted to be a composer. And so he was going to go get a fourth trumpet job somewhere in an orchestra somewhere so that he could be employed, but also be spending his time composing. And when he told that genius plan to Tom Stevens, Tom told him, look, man, nobody ever got anywhere trying to be fourth anything. You need to be principal trumpet. Later, Stan Friedman was principal trumpet for a number of years in the New Zealand Symphony. So there you have it. Nobody ever got anywhere by trying to be fourth anything. Right from Tom. Level 5 leadership. And this is a cool one too. Leaders who combine personal humility, which he mentions first, I like that, with fierce professional will. We've all seen people like this. And also we've seen people that combine the opposite of those two things. Personal braggadocious with lacking in professional ability. We can think of people, and I won't mention their names today, that fit that model. That's not who we want to be following. The level 5 leadership is someone who's like leading with humility and also has a fierce professional will. Tom Stevens, again, fits that really well. Bernie Edelstein, super well. And what I've learned, and also Hasso Plattner, the founder of SAP and the brains behind this building, the reason this is here. And what I've noticed, and like some of you all have too, in my luck, that I've been lucky to work with the great ones in a couple of different disciplines. Most all the time, not every single time, but most all the time, the great ones are humble. And secondarily, they're great at what they do. And my theory is they know they're great. They don't have to prove to you that they're great. So they can lead with humility. It's actually a pretty safe thing to do. Any comments, questions on either of those two? So another thing is first, get the right people on the bus and then decide where the bus should go. This is the opposite of what a lot of companies do. They come up with okay, maybe they do have a BA. Maybe they do have an idea of what the market needs, but they can't find any people that have any skills that fit that. So the music equivalent of this would be, if your class is chock full of bassoonists, perhaps you should have a bassoon quintet, right? Let's just get people and do what they do well. And we'll drive this to the woodwind emporium, and whatever the woodwinds have, I don't even know what it is, in place of an international trumpet guild. Maybe the bassoonists have a guild. I don't know. Let's hope so. They're forced and cursed with a life of living in front of the trumpet section in most orchestras. So we have a lot of empathy really for bassoonists. But hey, figure out where to drive the bus after you get really good and can't tell the people on the bus. Make sense? Next one is the hedgehog concept, and he talks at length. And I have to be honest, when I read Jim Collins' book, I had a hard time grasping this concept. I think I finally got it, which is find the intersection. I like the way it's written here. Find the intersection of what you're passionate about and what you are actually really good at, and have that drive. And by you, I might mean your company, right? What's the intersection of what you have passion for and what you're really good at? We one day when Bernie was retired in Florida, and I was visiting him, and he said something to me, and his wife was sitting next to him. He said, uh, he had a funny way of talking, which I won't try to imitate, but it's really wonderful. And he said, I just never knew what to tell these people that really have the passion for trumpet, but they just don't have the ability to be the best at it. So they got the passion, but they just don't have the ability. And I never knew what to tell them. And I said, Bertie, I think you did know what to tell them. Pretty much what you just said just right now, this minute. And I think you did those people a lot of good by being honest with them about, hey, you have to have both of these things. And it doesn't seem like you have both of them. So maybe there's a different economic engine. I'm sure he didn't use the word economic, but you guys get the metaphor. And that's a little bit of confronting brutal facts, and this is what, I apologize to the drummers in our audience for beating the drum so many times with this trumpet metaphor. But that's a little bit of cognitive dissonance right there, Stefan. All these trumpet teachers who are just brutal with their factual review of how you sounded. And it's got to help, or, and another way that this is seen in business is, think about salespeople for a minute, really successful rainmaker level, multi-million-dollar background salespeople. The classic kind of, what do we call it? Stereotype of salespeople is not being honest. And I've worked with the greatest salespeople there are. And what I notice is the great ones are really honest. In fact, they're brutally honest, some of them. And that's how you get the win. I see Keith giving the okay sign to that one, right? Have you had that experience, Keith?
Yeah, well, if you hopefully, the goal here is to do, to move through life with integrity, right? And if you really truly believe what it is you're putting out, putting forward, and you believe in your product, you believe in your service, you believe in the worth of your time, right? It's not a ruse, right? Like what you're providing, this is value, right? There's inherent value there.
Yeah.
And so to me, this is just about relationships and connectivity and openness, and it doesn't feel really salesy at all, and it shouldn't feel salesy at all, because you're not trying to pull. I don't know how, I don't know how else to explain it, but like you're really not trying to get over on somebody. You know what
Right.
I mean?
You're not trying
Like
you're not trying to pull a fast one
yeah,
on them. Yeah.
right. It's not. They're and and in that, right. You there's this trust that you have in yourself, and it's very easy to then communicate that. So it's just about where that lies. It's not this kind of this ruse. They're not your enemy.
Right. Right. Right.
So yeah, I love that. That is great.
Thank you. Thank you. And then that feeds right into the culture of discipline and building a sustainable organizational excellence. And the organization, by the way, might just be an organization of your own self and your schedule and your ability, and just having self-discipline about how you approach things. And a lot of So this might sound slightly critical of, the musicians in the world. If so, I'm one of them, but a lot of times, so great music sometimes comes with a lot of chaos, especially the creative part of great music. And what we've seen is that sometimes people focus on the chaos and they feel like a sense of accomplishment if things are chaotic, that they must be an artist because they've got a ton of chaos happening. And I would just say, well, no, not necessarily. A great metaphor for this is a friend of mine's a fisherman out of Dana Point, and he was out with his brother one day. He said suddenly his brother took a big bag of sourdough breadcrumbs, and started dumping it over the side. And he said, "What are you doing? Uh, that's no way to catch fish." He says, "Yeah, I know, but it attracts the seagulls. Whenever there's seagulls around, we always catch fish." And he goes, "No, the reason the seagulls are there because there are fish there. Fish don't come to where the seagulls are. It's a chaotic approach." So his brother recognized the chaos, but he didn't really recognize the directionality and culture of discipline, what really has to happen. So I've got a few more things to finish up on. This is a reminder of we're going to have some guest speakers. And in fact, I think next Saturday, we will have a guest speaker. I'm not positive who it will be yet. There's a couple of choices. And it's very likely to be somebody on this page. I'll just say that much for now. This is again what our schedule is, and we're on schedule next Friday, Saturday, June 6th and 7th. You should have the info for the Zoom link, and for next Friday and next Saturday. When you registered, you should have got the whole list, but I will send them out anyhow just to make sure people have them. What communication process, creative strategy and development, and then the Saturday source, message, channel objectives, and budgeting and media messaging. I may make some changes to that content on Saturday based on who the guest speaker is, and you'll know ahead of time who the guest speaker is because it's good marketing. And okay, these three books, the two I held up, and Jim Collins, Good to Great. One fun, when that book came out, Good to Great, I gave it to everybody I know, and including people like who ran the school that our kids were going to school at, and the head coach at the swim team that I swam for, the Nova Aquatics. And I didn't really expect anything. I just thought it was valuable and they might benefit from it. But then I found out that like one of the swimmers whose kids swam with Irvine Nova Aquatics went to their annual banquet. They said they were handing out Good to Great prizes for the best swimmers of the year. They had adopted the Good to Great slogan as their slogan of the year, and several other organizations adopted this as well. I'm not going to mention the name of the school, the middle school that I gave it to, because they were bordering on violating the humility first rule. What they told my wife was, "Hey, we really love that book that your husband gave us, and we've adopted it in this way. Instead of good to great, we're doing great to greater." Like, okay, really? You guys can't even admit to being good? You have to award yourself for being great, and now you change the whole name of the book. That's bad. This is the longer, and you'll get a whole copy of this too. This is my whole Tartini reading list, recommended reading. A lot of good stuff on here, some new, some old. Um, hmm. There's at least one trumpet player author on here, Charlie Schluter, which is a really great book. Also includes a whole chapter on chili recipes and other things that he used to make for his students. Dr. Bob Rotella, golf is not a game of perfect. He's the one that, uh, if you watch golf at all on TV, Rory McIlroy just won. So he's now won all four of the majors, the so-called career Grand Slam he won at the Masters this year. He had Bob Rotella advising him. You think Bob Rotella knows anything about golf? Probably not. It's a mind confidence. What do you call them? Sports psychologist. Okay, so, oh, I've got a student profile that I'll send you guys to fill out and send it back. And it'll be self-explanatory. But if you have a picture of yourself, put it in. If you have a little bio, put that in. And you've seen my bio. If you need a copy of that to plagiarize, let me know. I'll send it to you. This is how to get a hold of me. Office hours by appointment. I don't actually have an office. I do have hours. I'm available. And then here's kind of a summary of what we've been key takeaways for today. And this one is one of my favorites. So I don't know if you saw this, but it's from the New Yorker.
I don't have a question, but you all might like this link. I put it here in the chat, but it's an article that I read recently by someone that I guess makes crossword puzzles, and they wrote about this really interesting, I don't even know what to call it, like linguistic phenomena called square theory, and then he ties it into like broader themes that you can find in life, and then finally crosswords. It's just a really fun little article that it was just it's interesting. That's all.
Before we go on, Mike, you're muted.
I was saying a musical phrase. On that note, I think we can wrap up. And any other parting comments from anybody?
Yeah, I wanted to ask Stefan if you said you have some kind of an email blast going out. Would it be possible for me to get on that?
Definitely. I can add anybody who's interested onto our email list. I haven't really been consistent about blogging and putting stuff out, but you certainly I can add you. We'll actually be doing. I don't know how many of you are local to this area, but on the 26th of June, we're doing a sunset cruise out here in Newport Beach with my group, and it's going to be like an interactive AI game experience. I'm making it sound more interesting than it is. I think it's going to be. I don't know if you have ever heard of a human scavenger hunt. So the idea is like find someone who has deployed AI in their business and write down something that you learned from them, things like
Mm.
that. But just excuses to get people networking, and I mean, what's wrong with like just being out on a boat in Newport Beach, and there'll be food and drinks. It'll be a good time.
There you go.
That sounds great. Yeah, I'll make sure that everybody's connected with Stefan about that. And speaking about what's not to like about being out on the boat, that is another thing that I've got going, which is the Veneto 38, the Wanderlust. Stefan's been out with me, and that will be available as we go forward here to class members and anybody who wishes they were a class member. Thank you all for being here. And I call it client appreciation sailing. Usually we meet there about 10:30 and we go out for the day and have lunch, come back. Really a lot of fun. I'll send you guys a picture and invite for that. It does not look like the boat from my life cycle that was America's Cup winner. So rest assured, that's not the boat. It's a much more pleasant and restful experience. Cyrus, any last words of wisdom to close us out?
I don't think so, but I've just been sucking in a lot of information today. So thanks, everyone.
Fantastic. We will be in touch. See you next Saturday for the guest speaker. And thanks for being here.
All right, thank you.